Oh shoot. Hopefully it'll let us go live. My computer's tripping right now.
It says we're live.
All right, cool. So, guys, welcome. Sorry about the technical difficulties. My computer screen was tripping, but we have a great show. Once again, my boy Darshan is here, and we're talking 49ers, my man. How's your week been? How's your weekend? No 49er football over the weekend because we obviously played on Thursday, but you have a good weekend?
Yeah, man, it was cool. Yeah, no game on Sunday, so that was kind of like sometimes it's kind of nice, man, just to not have that stress. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like win or
Yeah, we
lose
had the
on
midweek
Thursday.
stress.
Yeah, win or lose on Thursday, you go in Sunday and you're like, well,
It's
whatever.
just
So
about your fantasy team and gambling. That's all.
exactly,
That's
yeah,
watching football.
exactly. Yeah, and my wife's a
Um,
my wife's a Raider fan, so she gets to share in the misery a little bit.
got it. Well, they're playing tonight, so
Yeah, I know.
we'll get you out so you can watch the game with her before that starts. But the 49ers did play this week. Unfortunately, it ended up being a loss, which for the most part, pretty much not mathematically quite yet, but definitely, I believe, they're not going to make the playoffs with this. So, for the most part, ended the season as far as competitively. But, um, tell me what you thought about the game, first impressions, kind of, and then we'll kind of break into some detailed discussion.
So I thought defensively they did really well. I mean, what more can you ask for? You know what I mean? You basically hold Matt Stafford to almost nothing for the most part of the game. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
Cooper Cup with 0 fantasy points, man, like
yeah,
0 across the board. I think, and he's healthy, so that he usually eats up the 49ers, so they did an
yeah,
amazing job on Cooper Cup.
yeah. So I thought that defensively they did really well. Um, Man, the offense is just really frustrating. It's like I thought they started the game actually like decent. I mean, we had the Moody field goal, but again, it just came like you're moving the ball down the field, and then it was like, they're in like a 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6 situation. You know what I mean? And then it's handoff to Debo. It's like, I mean, that hasn't worked all year. Why do we want to kill the momentum by doing that? I don't know. So it's just stuff like that continues to be frustrating. And I think Purdy, for example, I think he's a rhythm quarterback, and you got to just get him going. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, and you got to get him going early. And so I think when that happens, stuff like that happens, it just kills the momentum and the rhythm of the whole offense. And then they got to go back out there again, and it's just rinse and repeat. You know what I mean? So it just seemed like that. I think the Bears game was the one game where Shanahan was like, "All right, this is like vintage Shanahan." You know what I mean?
Right.
And then now
Yeah,
we're
and I
back to
mean,
square one.
you thought that they figured something out. Obviously, George Kittle is, even more than Jennings. I think George Kittle should be option one in this iteration of the offense, and then Jennings and then Debo. But obviously, after the statement that Debo made the week before, it at least looked, whether or not that was by script or if that was the choices that Brock Purdy was making. It seems like that it was feed Debo and make him happy, which I personally think was at the expense of this team actually winning a game. But we're going to get more in depth into Debo. I agree with you. I think the defense played really well, especially if you look at what the Rams did against Buffalo. Right? They put up they obviously did they end up beating Buffalo? They beat Buffalo, right?
Yeah,
And put up quite a bit of points. Didn't score any touchdowns against the 49ers. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating, Darshan, because all they needed, just if they scored one touchdown,
mm,
like the game would have been,
I know.
whoever scored a touchdown was going to win that game, and nobody could. Fortunately, that was the do or die game, and they ended up, not doing so. Um, but there are, before we go into kind of maybe the negatives, because obviously there was a lot of negatives to go around. One of the positives was Dre Greenlaw came back. Um, Talk to me about what you saw from Dre Greenlaw. Obviously, he did get injured, and we're not sure if he's going to be playing next week. But what did you think about his return and how he played?
Well, dude, you just see a difference, right? I mean, the defense just looks different with Greenlaw in there. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Rams couldn't move the ball while that guy's out on the field. You know what I mean? I think like I forgot the stat, but he had like the most tackles through the first three quarters, like, as he was playing compared to anybody else. So there's just no denying that he brings such a elite ability to that defense, and it sets the tone. You know what I mean? And as soon as he's out of the game, the Rams start running the ball, they're driving down the field, and it just looks like same old Nick Sorensen defense. You know what I mean? So um yeah, man, I he's one guy that this team, we're talking about Purdy contract and this and that. Man, you better lock up Dre Greenlaw. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and I mean, I think you could even go back. The last time we saw him play, Darshan, was the Super Bowl,
mhm.
and the game was significantly different when he was on playing versus not. Right when he was on the field, Travis Kelsey was pushing Andy Reid because he was so frustrated with his inability to be part of the game plan. Like he had Patrick Mahomes confused. Like the defense was dominating that game. I think a lot of people lose sight of that because obviously, how the game ended. But that first half, that when Dre Greenlaw was there before the injury, like it looked like it was going to be an easy victory for the 49ers in that Super Bowl. I remember my friends were like texting me, dude, this is a easy dub for you guys. Like, because they
Right.
looked so dominant against the team. And then Dre Greenlaw goes out. All of a sudden, just like we saw against the Rams, now they're starting to move the ball. The middle of the field starts opening up. The running game starts, getting better, and so on and so forth. I agree with you, man. Like, it's kind of interesting. Dre Greenlaw not playing this season, I think, has earned him more money, showing how important he is to this defense. And I think it's across the board, man. Everybody says you need, like, Fred Warner, obviously amazing. Fred Warner with Dre Greenlaw, that's the all pro level player that
Yeah,
you
it's
need.
it reminds me of the Willis and Bowman duo. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like there was a lot of debate back then. It was like, maybe Bowman is the better, he might be the better linebacker. I don't know, but I don't really think it's that simple. But it's sort of similar like right now. It's like I don't think Warner is as effective without Greenlaw and vice versa. You know what I mean? I think Warner has like better coverage skills, you know what I mean? But man, when Greenlaw's in there, it's like there's just this fear he instilled on the other side,
Sure. I
And
mean,
you
he
can't.
he definitely brings the energy. And I think when you meant, like, you look at right now, I think the Vikings are doing it really well. You have obviously the superstar in Jefferson, and then you have a guy like Addison who's benefiting from the, like, everybody's attention being on Jefferson. I think it's similar with that linebacker duo, right? When it's just Fred Warner out there, and let's say Devondre Campbell, RIP, right?
Yeah.
We saw what the defenses were doing, right? They were just focusing wherever Devondre Campbell was. That's where the play was going to go. So you could kind of like play away from Fred Warner to a certain extent. When Greenlaw's on there, though, all of a sudden now you're it's like pick your poison, right? Because Greenlaw probably isn't as good. I don't think anybody would say he's as good as Fred Warner as a linebacker. However, the drop off isn't as steep compared to the rest of the linebacking core. And because they're focused on Warner, it opens up things for Greenlaw, and he's able to take advantage of it. And I think it's like they cohabitate very, very well. Where combined, they're way more unstoppable than obviously separate. So I agree with you, man. I think that's somebody that definitely needs to be re-signed. The defense looks totally different, and one of the themes I think we'll get into as we continue to do these shows is like culture. I think is something that's extremely important with this team. Like they definitely play better when there's a certain vibe with the team, quote unquote, or a certain energy level that I think was missing throughout this season. A lot of people had been calling that out even through training camp, that the vibes and the energy was off. And I think Dre Greenlaw plays a big role in bringing that energy and bringing that vibe with his style of play and his style of leadership. And I think that was missing throughout this season. And you got to see when he's there how it looks like a completely different team.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So that was some positives. Obviously, I mean, unfortunately, he did get injured. He didn't practice today, but I don't think it's necessary. I think they're still holding out hope that he potentially could play this week. But um, obviously, he needs to get on the practice field for doing that. However, I think the story of the game obviously was Debo, right? So a lot of conversation from Debo Samuel the week before after the win against Chicago, saying that he hasn't fallen off, he just hasn't gotten the opportunities. Well, I don't know if and then obviously Brock Purdy came out and saying, yeah, he's right, we need to get him the ball more. Kyle Shanahan kind of echoed the same sentiments. They did it. He got a lot of opportunities. It didn't look like though that it was lack of opportunities. It looked like Debo has lost the step. So tell me what your assessment of was Debo, and what you felt about his play and just overall the game plan of featuring him.
Yeah, it's sad, man. It's I don't know, man. Like the Debo regression is something that has to be studied. You know what I mean? It's like I don't quite get it, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's a scheme thing or he's just lost a step. I know some people are like, "Oh, he's gained weight." I don't know. He still looks physically like similar to me than he did the same way he'd looked last year. So I don't think it's necessarily that, but it could be. But there's something just that's not right. You know what I mean? So that drop, that one critical drop where it was like Brock hit him right in the hands, there was a clear path to the end zone. I just felt like that was honestly when that happened. I'm like that. I felt like that was the game. To be honest with you, and then yeah, that's so. I mean, I can't imagine that he's here next year without either restructuring or something. You know what I mean? So
Would you want him? Let's say they restructure, save some money, whatever. Do you think that he's an asset to this team still?
um, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like the thing is like the entire team has kind of like flopped a little bit this year, and obviously it starts with the coaching. So it's like part of me wants to. I can't be inconsistent and give like Purdy slack and say, well, he had an off year, and then not give Debo the same thing when he's produced at such an elite level for since he's been in the league. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. I hope to really see something in the next 3 games to give some glimmer of hope. You know what I mean? That it's not just like a permanent fall off. Like he's not just like washed, as the kids say. But I hope not. I would love to have him back and for him to be back in his normal Debo form. But at the same time, it's like the way we've used him over the last 3 years, that takes a toll, man. The whole like wide back thing and running out of the backfield, all those reverses. Dude, some of these hits he took last year, I mean, it's like, yeah, he's breaking off tackles and stuff like that, but all that has an effect, you
Adds
know.
up. Yeah, and I mean, he's an older receiver in the sense that he came into the league a little bit older than other people. So I think he's pushing 30 right now, even though he's only had the one contract. Amin the Dream, another one of us Indian brethren. So Daisy Boy Up, he says, don't bring Debo back next year. His attitude mentality is crap. I'm okay with you having an off year, but hold yourself accountable. Instead, he says, I'm not getting the ball enough. And this is the point that I was going to make. I mean, great point. So, there's this theory, addition by subtraction. So the ball player Debo, I think, has regressed, but I think where he's impacted this team more negatively, Darshan, is the attitude of Debo. And what I mean by the attitude, and obviously I don't know the guy in person, whatever, but when you look at the Debo kind of media run that he does. He's the player that's like, we've been the best team over the last 4 years, even though Kansas City has beat them twice in the Super Bowl. He's the one that continues to say that, like, we're the most dominant, we're the guys that the targets on our back. Like, and just like Amin mentioned, there's not the accountability that, hey, we need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what we need to do to take that next step. It's always that, hey, if Brock Purdy didn't get injured, we would have won. If this didn't happen, we would have done this. If this didn't happen, like, I think that when you have somebody who's paid the way that he's paid, that has the ear of the coach, like Kyle Shanahan and him, the relationship that they have, it does impact the team negatively when that person is doing the things that, like, hey, it's almost like we forgot that he pushed the player during a game, right? He with Tabor Pepper, that happened, right? He complains about not getting enough touches. He's going, he does the podcast, which, okay, that's cool, but if the message is always like, there's nothing we need to change, it's just all gonna click. I don't know if that's the mentality. I think the humility of losing as much as the 49ers have at such high times, I think there's a value in the just supreme confidence that he has, but there's a little bit of delusion when it doesn't come with, hey, there are some things that we need to work on, which at least outwardly he's not there. That messaging isn't there. It's always somebody else's fault or some kind of circumstance, which is why we haven't reached the promised land. I think that getting rid of that can benefit this team as far as when we're talking about culture and, hey, we're not a Super Bowl winning team yet. We can't carry ourselves like we've won the Super Bowl. And I think Debo does carry it like he's won the Super Bowl when he hasn't. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I know the last episode we did, I brought that up a little bit in terms of like there seems to be like when they started the season, there seemed to be this like almost sense of entitlement or kind of like this like, all right, like we're gonna win every game, right? We got this, right? And like, listen, I get it. Like on one hand, like I want my players to be like, yeah, we're the best. We're gonna dominate and be confident for sure. But like you said, you don't want to do that at the cost of like ignoring reality. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So, and I think that's kind of what happened, especially with Debo.
Yeah,
And
and I mean,
even when he watches podcasts and stuff, and when he gets asked certain things, or any podcast he's been on, he gets asked certain things. There's like this kind of like lackadaisical kind of answer, a lot of the times. He's just kind of like, yeah, so like it's, when you hear guys like Jerry Rice or Steve Young when they talk about like losing to the Cowboys twice in a row, in the 90s, and they were just like, yeah, we were so angry, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and I just don't. It just sucks because you don't really see that with some of these players, other than like Kittle. You know what I mean? But like, you want your stars like Debo and stuff like that to feel that. Like, yeah, you know what? Like, until we beat Kansas City, like, yeah, we're just there is no second place. It's just first loser. Like, you know what I mean?
yep,
Like, to be hard on yourselves. Let us give you praise. You should be hard on yourself.
yeah, and even more than how it looks in the media or how it shows, like how it's presented. It, it's like it. I truly believe he thinks that way, Darshan, and that's why I think, hey, you gotta, if you're gonna win a Super Bowl with him being a key component of your roster, that mentality doesn't work because the Fred Warner. You see it from Fred Warner, you see it from Bosa, you see it from Kittle. They're not just like, hey man, like this wasn't our year. It's like it hurts them. Like they carry that with them. It's like, I can't sleep. Like, what do we have to do to get to that point? And Debo is kind of like, nah, man, we're good. It just like like I said, he carries himself like he won. It doesn't seem like there's any difference between if he won or if he lost. Like it's the same person. It seems like.
Right. Yeah.
And I think as a leader of the team, and as now that we're like, look, the version that we had, the 2000, this iteration of the team, I think it's done. Now we have to shift to a new iteration. I don't know if he could be a big component, and also I don't think that the level of play that he's bringing on the field, is worth that aspect of the kind of presence that he has, if that makes sense, because of him being kind of like one of the more seasoned players on the team, being a part of this since 2019. I think getting rid of him actually can benefit and give some more opportunities to a Jennings, to a Pearsall, to whomever else they bring through the draft. Like, I think, and it forces Kyle Shanahan to not just make him the primary focus, which I think can get reinvigorate or force Kyle Shanahan to get more into his creativity bag versus just like, hey, let's just give the ball to Debo type of thing.
Yeah, 1,000%. So yeah, I think we saw that in the last game where Debo was kind of used as a crutch, and he's just not that guy anymore. So you know,
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, I'm a big Kyle Shanahan fan, but I'm open. I feel like fair when it comes to criticism, and I think Kyle Shanahan holds on to players too long, right? He doesn't have that mentality like Belichick. That's like, I'd rather get rid of a player a year early than get rid of a player a year late. And I mean, there was, I don't know if it's real or not. You never know, but it seemed like the Jets were willing to give a first round pick for Debo last offseason. That first round pick, or was it last offseason, 2 off seasons ago? But
right?
that first round pick 2 seasons ago was ended up being Garrett Wilson, right? And if you think about, if Garrett Wilson was on this team, how that could have like help extend the window versus now Debo, who is obviously on the downward trajectory of his thing. It's interesting because obviously he's not. Nobody's going to give a first round pick for him now. What do you
Yeah,
do with him? You just cut him. Can you get anything from him? Like you mentioned, do they restructure? But for me, I think they have to figure out a way for him not to be on the roster next year for this team to take that next step forward.
yeah, totally agree.
So, obviously the season, isn't going to lead to a Super Bowl this year, Darshan. So we probably only have what, 4 more games, 3 more games of the season
We,
till it's over. I think
what is it? 14 games play? Yeah, 3 more games.
3 more games, right? So of these 3 games, what would you like to see happen from the 49ers? What are you looking for out of these 3 games?
Well, number one, I think you got to see Purdy get back to doing what he's doing or what he was doing last year, and you know, we need to see more consistency, more above average play. You know, he can't be turning into a pumpkin anymore. That's for sure. And so I'd like to see him like take what the defense gives him, more check downs, like that play on that interception he had last week or on Thursday, totally avoidable. Had he just taken the check down. Which is the irony of it is that all last season, these talking heads were like, "Oh, he's Captain Check Down. He's Check Down Charlie. That's how he's getting." It. It's like, no, man, you're not watching the games. This kid doesn't check down. That's part of the problem. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? He's just like balls to the wall, throw it deep, and I want him to check it down more. He's like the opposite of Alex Smith. You know what I mean? So it's like, no, dude, just take what the defense gives you, check it down, and live to fight another day. I think some of that comes with age. You know what I mean? I think some of that, like, here's the thing: I'd rather have a guy who's hardwired to be like that, and then teach him to
Reel him in.
control that, versus a guy like, again, big fan of Alex, right? But like, he was hardwired the other way. You know what I mean? Where his first instinct was to go with the flat or the check down or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if the deep ball wasn't like totally open and right, like perfectly there, he just wouldn't take it. You know what I mean? So I'd rather have a guy with a little bit of a Brett Favre mentality in that sense. But yeah, I'd like to see him play smarter. That's for sure. That's the bottom line. And then defensively, I'm curious to see what it looks like with Greenlaw getting snaps, and I'd like to see more out of Ricky Pearsall. I mean, I'm not really sure what he's all about yet. You know what I mean? He had that one play, that end around.
Mm-hmm.
Like I forget what against the Bucks. I can't remember, but he had that one play. It went for big, 39 yards, 40 yards. and he looked really good. And I was like, okay. And he's made some pretty good catches. You know what I mean? But I want to see more of that. I want to see more of him. Um, Outside of that, I mean, it'd be nice to see. I don't know if Isaac Garendo, is he healthy? I want to see more of him. I think he's really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, he played last week, so I'm assuming that
Okay.
he's healthy.
Yeah. So more of Isaac Garendo, because clearly CMC's in the twilight of his career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to make a decision here pretty soon. If not this offseason, the next offseason for sure.
Well, they
So
already made the decision, right? They extended him with CMC, but I agree with you. But I think my main focus, Darshan, is right now. If you're not playing for a Super Bowl, you kind of want to play for the best draft pick you could get, right? So
let's tank.
I don't want them to necessarily tank, but I do want to see these younger guys get a lot more reps because I think the thing with Purdy in this offense is he's a big trust guy, right? So he trusts Debo, he trusts Jennings, he trusts Kittle, and he trusts BA. When BA went down and when Debo's not playing well, that trust factor with the other guys isn't there, right? And Debo isn't part of our future, right? Um, the core is, Jennings is there, Kittle's going to be there, BA when he comes back, whenever he comes back in 2025. But he needs to build more trust with the Pearsalls, with the Cowing, maybe if he could get some more run. Obviously, like you mentioned with Garindo, with these guys, like one of the reasons why I think he checked down a little bit more last season was because it was CMC there. He trusts CMC. So he understands that if I throw it to this guy, it could become a big play. So he's willing to throw that. I think he didn't check down, quote unquote, as much this season because it was Mason, which I don't think he had the same level of trust. Or Garindo. Obviously, Garindo made that great play. I think it was 2 weeks ago. To start developing that. But I think that's going to be our next topic, talking about Brock Purdy in the future. It seems like he is going to be the quarterback here for the foreseeable future. Let's see him kind of develop this offense to build that momentum going into next season. So I want to see, the younger guys like Malik Mustafa get the starting role. I want to see Ronald Green get the starting role. Like we to start giving these guys that are younger the reps, let them make their mistakes. Let them, it might not lead to quote unquote winning football, but that's okay. Like if we lose, we actually benefit either way. If we win, great. They build some confidence, know that it's that way. If we lose, great. That helps us get, a better draft pick moving forward. So I think that's what I really want to see. I also want to see kind of Kyle Shanahan. I want to see him start working on reinventing himself in these next 3 weeks. I want to feel like Darshan. Where was this all season? Like I want to have that feeling that is like, man, if we only were like this all season, we would have, been much better. To show, I mean, I believe that he can do it. I think there's a fan base that is completely out on Kyle Shanahan. I think there's also a portion of the fan base that is losing faith in Shanahan. And I could see where some people are losing faith, where it's just like, man, like where is the Shanahan touches to this offense that get everybody excited and all that kind of stuff. So I want to see him kind of go back and get into his bag where it's like Kittle is running wide open or Jennings is running wide open or like like all that stuff that we got excited about, him being here. I think he needs that next wave of energy. And I want to kind of see just signs that we could build on moving into next season.
Yeah, totally agree. I was gonna say, yeah, it'd be nice to see some better play calling and things like that over the next 3 games. And sometimes a lot of that momentum it carries into the next season. You know what I mean? Just like losses can, wins can too. So while we may lose in the potential draft pick, you gain in that confidence and that vibe, as we say,
Sure.
going into the next season. So
I
yeah.
think another big thing, Darshan, is I kind of want to shut down some of these players that I know are part of the, like, I don't want to see Nick Bosa back. I would sit Fred Warner out. Let that foot heal, right? If I think if I'm the front office, I've seen enough of Dre
Yeah.
Greenlaw to know we need to bring him back. Like shelf him. Like let's let him get fully healthy because this season is a wash. Let D Winters get that run. Let whomever else is back there get their run. Like um, you know, I want to if I know there's somebody that's gonna be a part here, and if they're nicked up here and there, we don't need to see them play. Let's see what the next. Let's develop some of this depth, or let's start understanding who we need to make these decisions on of the people that are free agents, who we're bringing back, who we're not bringing back. Because if Renato Green, I don't know what his health situation is, but if he's healthy and he could start playing really well these next 3 games, maybe that makes the Mooney Ward decision a lot easier, right? To have him step, or if Jair Brown, I think a lot of people are out on him, but if we in the next 3 games you can make a definitive decision if hey we need to draft another safety in the draft, or we need some more defensive line depth, or can a Matur Gross like show that hey let's re-sign him, or whomever these guys are. Like I think it's something like there's so many like 30 something free agents on this team going into next season. Obviously, we can't let all of them walk. We got to bring people back, but who are those guys that we need to bring back? Let them play. Let the Bosas and the Floyds and the Warners and Greenlaws. Let them sit, get healthy, and next season let's start with the new version of this roster, but everybody's healthy moving forward.
Yeah, totally agree.
Cool. Well, we'll finish off our show, man. You were clairvoyant, I should say, when everybody's talking about Brock Purdy and what his demands are going to be. I think you were one of the first people that came out and said, look, Trevor Lawrence got $55 million a year. I find it hard to believe that with what Trevor Lawrence has done in this league, Brock Purdy and his team are gonna take anything less than that. I think the report came out that he's wanting to reset the quarterback market, and that he wouldn't take a deal that's less than 50 million. Like that's not a deal that he would take, a 50 million and below. Talk to me about the situation with Brock, what you would do if you're the 49ers, and how you feel about this new report coming out talking about he wants the bag.
All right. So the one thing fans have to realize too is it's not about what you want, right? Of course, I would want Brock Purdy to take a $45 million deal. Um, but that's not going to happen. The market for quarterbacks is it for good quarterbacks is in the $50 million range. That's what Tua's getting. That's what Trevor's getting. And on Twitter, this past or since that report came out, people are like, well, Josh Allen's only getting. I'm like, well, yeah, but Josh Allen signed that deal in 2021. Guess what? A report came out today where he is seeking a new deal.
Right.
I guarantee you that new deal is it's gonna start at 65 million. That's where it's
Mhm.
gonna start. And he's probably gonna be like closer to 68. If he wins a Super Bowl this year, that guy is getting $70 million. So whether he gets 65 to 70, it's going to make Brock's contract look very cheap. I mean, that's the thing that people don't realize is that it seems like a lot. So he's like, oh, he wants 55. Okay, so even if you're paying 55, 56, 57, in a year's time, that's going to be nothing because
Right.
these guys are going to get extended and it's going to all reset into the 60s. You know what I mean? So I think it's a mistake to wait and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, again, why would Brock do that? You know what I mean? That would be like total financial malpractice by his agent. I mean, he should fire him on the spot if he were to even suggest that. He's not going to take a Baker Mayfield prove it type deal. He doesn't need to. He's already proved himself. He took you to 2 NFC championship games. You know what I mean? One of them he got his elbow snapped off, which isn't his fault. The other one he orchestrated a comeback win. You know what I mean? Got you to a Super Bowl. Um, and I've said it so many times. I mean, he literally came within one whiffed blocking assignment of getting a six ring for this franchise. So it's not like you can definitively go back to the Super Bowl or any playoff game that didn't work out and and look at this totality of the game and look at it and say, you know what, if we just had a better quarterback. You know what I mean? Now, is that
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like he listen, of course you can get better at the position. If a Josh Allen or a Mahomes were to magically become available, yes. You know what I mean? Shit, I'll PayPal a little bit myself. You know what I mean? But I'm saying that's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, like they watched Josh Allen play last night. Oh, see, that's a $60 million quarterback. No, you're wrong. That's a $70 million quarterback. Okay.
Mhm.
Second of all, he's a generational talent. Why are you comparing? That's like, imagine teams in the 90s that are just like, we're not going to pay this guy. He's not Michael Jordan. Okay, I guess that's one way to operate your franchise. You know what I mean? Is just
Yeah,
not pay people and not sign people because they're not the best of the best. You know
sure.
what I mean? But
Oh, I think we lost Darshan, but I agree with a lot of the points that he's making. Um, let me get out of that till he shows up. So, uh, oh, he's back already. Cool. He's back. So yeah, man, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I put out a video earlier today. I think when we talk about franchise quarterback, and this is where I think the discussion gets derailed a lot. Darshan is like nobody knows how to define what a franchise quarterback is, right? So then you fall back on who are the most elite quarterbacks: Mahomes, Allen, Stafford, Lamar. And then you're like, well, if my quarterback isn't them, they're not a franchise quarterback. And I disagree with that sentiment. I think that there's different levels of what a franchise quarterback can be, and based off of what you have, your franchise is going to look different, right? So to me, what makes Mahomes and Allen and Lamar and Stafford elite is they the margin of error that they give you as the quarterback is much larger than other quarterbacks. And what do I mean by that? So Mahomes is the epitome, right? You can win a Super Bowl with Tyreek Hill as your best receiver, who at the time was like one of the top, if not the top receiver at the time. You could trade him away, bring in a rookie, Rashee Rice, and you can still win a Super Bowl with that guy. That's what I mean. Like, your margin of error is so big that it doesn't matter who's on the team. When you have a Patrick Mahomes, you have a chance and you have a caliber of team to win a Super Bowl. I think Josh Allen is the same way. Whether it's Stephon Diggs or it's Shakir, like, that offense is gonna look really, really good because Josh Allen is that type of guy. Now, Josh Allen hasn't made it to a Super Bowl because he has to go past Patrick Mahomes, who is a little bit better when it comes to that margin of error. So, is Brock Purdy a franchise quarterback? I say yes, because of all the things you mentioned. He's gone to NFC Championship game. He's gone to the Super Bowl. It took that Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league right now, overtime to be able to get enough points to beat, a Brock Purdy led team. Now, I think where the nuance comes in and where people like conflate, and this is where all the debate is Brock Purdy's franchise, as he's the franchise quarterback, is different than what a Mahomes or a Allen's franchise looks like. I don't think that Brock Purdy can win a Super Bowl with the team that Mahomes won a Super Bowl with last year. He needs more weapons. He needs more talent than a Mahomes does. And I think that's where the discussion needs to be. Is like, we need to stop debating if Brock Purdy is the franchise quarterback. He is a franchise quarterback,
right.
but
And
what, the franchise is going to look different than these elite franchise quarterbacks that don't need as much as Brock Purdy. And that's where the money, I think, comes into play, because you can't pay him in a way that affects your ability to get the weapons around him, because he needs that to be able to compete with a Mahomes who might need less because of his ability to play the position better.
right. And there's no point to even, it's like, oh, well, Brock needs weapons around him to be successful. So see, that's why that's 99% of every quarterback that's ever played the position. You know what I mean? Unless it's Montana, Brady, Mahomes. You know, and I know, yeah, we can say Josh Allen, but hey, listen, Josh hasn't won. He hasn't gotten past the AFC Championship games yet, right? Yet. So I'm only going to talk about the guys who have been to the Super Bowl and won, right, multiple times, and that's Montana, Brady, and Mahomes. Outside of those three guys, right, everyone else, more or less, needs weapons around them, needs things clicking around them, needs a running game around them to be to get to that next level, right? Look at Rodgers. Look at, I mean, you can name so many quarterbacks, right? Even
Right.
quarterbacks that have won the Super Bowl, like Drew Brees and whatnot. So, so I don't think that's a reason to not pay a guy, you know. And then listen, if Brock had won the Super Bowl and if he did play lights out this season, guess what? That report that came out wouldn't have said 55 million. It would have said 61. He
Right.
would he would be wanting more than Dak Prescott, and rightfully so. And there would be nothing any of us would say, right? Hey, you know what? This guy brought ring number 6. He's played lights out 3 seasons in a row. He wants 62.5 million. Well, what are you gonna say? Dak's getting that, and Dak hasn't done shit, right?
Right.
It's just right now because everybody's, a little bit sensitive and
And he's coming
what
off
what's
a down year, right? He's coming off
he's
a
coming
down year.
off he's coming off a slump, and he's also coming off a really shitty ending to that game. So
Yeah.
everybody's like freshly like butthurt right now. You know what I mean? But you still have to look at the totality of it. You have to think like his agent. His agent is simply going to say, "Listen, this is the market for the quarterbacks. This is what it is." And you see people on Twitter like, "Oh, nobody else is going to pay Brock that much." What do you mean? For the last 25 years, the one consistent thing that has happened every single offseason in the NFL is that a team pays stupid money for mediocre talent. And I'm not calling Brock mediocre talent by any means, but I'm just saying, like, let's assume you believe that Brock is mid, right?
Right.
There are teams that pay good money for mid talent all the time. It happens every offseason at every position. You know what I
Kirk
mean?
Cousins is damn near a billionaire because of him being able to
Yeah.
be to
Look
get
at
paid
Kirk.
something else.
Yeah, look at Kirk. Look at I mean, look at you're telling me you don't think the Las Vegas Raiders would overpay? They're not going to overpay for somebody like Brock Purdy. Oh, well, they could draft a guy. Yeah, they could draft a guy, or they could get a guy with a proven track record who's still really, really young.
Daniel Jones got the bag when he was,
Yeah.
when he. So there's guys that clearly haven't had as much success as Brock Purdy that have gotten paid. And yeah, I mean, I think ultimately Brock Purdy's going to get paid, but and I think you put it in really good context, right? If that number of 55 million is where they could meet within probably within the same season because of what Josh Allen is going to get paid, or this next wave of quarterbacks like Darnold potentially is going to get a bag, and obviously Dak already got 60 plus million. 55 million actually is kind of like a bargain, like you mentioned, especially a year or two from now, where it's going to look even better. I mean, Patrick Mahomes signed that 10-year deal, 500 million, which sounded incredible. But now when you look at it just like yearly, 50 million, like a year, you're like, dang, that's like a steal for what you're getting from
Yeah,
Patrick
and,
Mahomes,
and
right?
and somebody like Mahomes, it's like Brady, where it's like their contract numbers. You really can't even look at it because they're getting so much money in endorsements. So for
Right.
them, they're not even. It's not that they're not relying on that. I don't want to say that, but it's not like their focus. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They're for them, they're so good. They're like you said, Mahomes is like, you can't even call Mahomes a franchise QB. He's just something different. You know what I mean? He's like elite. And he transcends the game almost, kind of like a Michael Jordan, where it's like, no, dude,
Right.
you're a brand in and of itself. You know what I mean? And he's just going to, for him, it's just more important to like win. It builds the aura and all this kind of
Right.
stuff, which then feeds into the commercial aura of Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, but for the rest of these guys, they got to get it how they can get it.
Sure. And I mean, I mean, put it here, you know, 55 million is a smart thing. Give him like a 3 year, not 5, 6 years. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think that like ultimately, like Darshan said, I mean, you have to make a decision on Purdy. I think you can't keep slow playing it. unless it's tied into Kyle Shanahan, right? Because if it's like, hey, we'll give you a 3-year deal because that's when, like, we're giving Kyle Shanahan 3 more years. If he doesn't win a Super Bowl, we're moving on from him as a coach. Then I could understand that, because now you want a total reset where you want a new coach to be in and be able to get his guys, so on and so forth. But
It's yeah, it's the thing is, it's disrespectful. Honestly, you just like, I get the logic behind it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, just sign him to a 3-year deal. You know what I mean? Like, that makes sense on paper. I totally, I agree. I literally, I agree. But then there's the reality, and the reality is that it's it's disrespect. You can't compare him to Baker. Baker was in the dumps before he got that deal. He got to Tampa Bay, and he had to prove himself because he hadn't accomplished really much prior to that. He went to Carolina, had a dud of a season, you know what I mean? And then he got this prove it deal, which is what it was a prove it deal. Brock has already proven himself, and guess what? He proved it to you for free.
right.
So now you're going to reward the guy by saying, you know what? Just take another pay cut for 3 years. While all these other guys who haven't done what you have, they're going to get paid more. Come on, man. That's not going to work.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, um, the deal that the Eagles gave to uh, Hurts is what, I think the 49ers should look at too. Like, that's a deal that made him, one of the top paid quarterbacks. However, somehow it didn't affect the cap as much. I don't know how they did it. I think Howie Roseman is the best GM in the league. Like, they always have talent there and everybody's getting paid, it seems like, or whatnot. And we have a guy like Parag that can make that stuff work. Ultimately, I mean, I do think that they're set on Brock Purdy. I think the deal gets done. I think it's going to be 55 minimum AAV, but it's going to be structured in a way that benefits the 49ers. And I think the way that you do that, unfortunately or fortunately, is you got to put more years on it, right? You got to have like 5-6 years on that so that you could constantly keep reworking it each year to free up more money. So I think that's ultimately, I think it ends up being probably a 6-year deal, with X amount guaranteed, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, man, I mean, this offseason is going to be really, really interesting, Darshan,
Yeah.
because,
I,
this is a change in trajectory, and we got to see what Shanahan and Lynch do, and how they're equipped to be able to make this change.
yeah. I'm calling it right now. I think that barring a total shit the bed performance over the next 3 games from Purdy, you know what I mean? As long as he just plays consistently okay over the next 3 games, I think management is going to basically wash off this year as like a, hey, you know what, this was a trash year for everybody, and he's going to get, like you said, a 5 or 6 year deal at about 57 per. I just think that's the number. I don't think he's going to get Dak money. Otherwise, his agent or whoever leaked this would have said that, hey, we want 60. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Dak's getting 60. We want 60. They said 55 for a reason. And I think they know that it's going to be between 55 and 57. So it's basically saying, hey, we're not taking less than Trevor. You know what I mean? And we
Yeah.
want more than Tua. So I really think it's going to be like a 56, 57 type number, which then puts it at what? 6 years, 342 million, something like that. You know what I mean? And it'll come down to the guaranteed money. I think Trevor's getting what, 40 million guaranteed. So I'm guessing Brock's going to want 42 guaranteed, just something, that beats that 40 number. So we'll see. And I know, like, man, I just Twitter's Niner Twitter is gonna just,
Twitter
everybody's
GMs.
heads gonna explode because they're just, these people have just deluded themselves into thinking that, like, I mean, the best comments were like, no man, don't worry, Brock's like a nice Christian kid.
Yeah.
He's gonna take 30 million. It's like, no,
He
dude.
vacations on a farm, Darshan. He doesn't care about money.
He doesn't
Like,
care
come
about
on.
money. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. He
Yeah,
may not,
John
but
Deere's
he's,
expensive, bro. Those
yeah,
tractors
yeah.
are expensive, bro.
Yeah, hey, we're from Bakersfield. We know this stuff,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, man, and I agree with you, and I think, like, ultimately, we're talking about that, but it would be nice if they break them out. Look, they broke off Jimmy G with not proving nearly as much as Brock Purdy is
After
proved. So,
5 games and
right,
mid stats, he had 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in basically garbage time of the season against teams that didn't give a shit. Like,
right,
yeah,
and
come on, dude. You're gonna
they made him the highest paid quarterback at the time.
highest
So,
paid quarterback in history. On top of that, like
so
so
yeah,
you're
I
gonna
think
do that and not pay the guy who's been your best quarterback since Steve Young, and you're gonna say, come on, prove it some more. Yeah, okay,
yeah. No, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I think it's recency bias.
right.
He's a good quarterback. The numbers are what they are. Like that's just the market.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't. I think that it's not necessarily a pure meritocracy. It's just kind of like, hey, if you're the best guy at the time, you're gonna reset kind of the market type of thing. And ultimately, look, what I want to see Darshan this offseason, I think Brock Purdy gets paid. I agree with you. That contract is going to be a couple million here and there around what you just mentioned. But I would love to see, and we could get into this in another show. But like, what are you going to do to invest in Brock Purdy? Right, he needs a better offensive line. He needs. We need like better in the trenches. Like that's what we need to see. Okay, if you're going to pay this guy, now let's keep him upright. Let's give him time. Let's keep him protected. Let's get him the weapons that we need, and let's get Kyle Shanahan back to making Brock Purdy look like the MVP caliber quarterback that he was last season. Like I think that the down year, a lot of blame is there. I think Brock Purdy's decision making is there, but also Kyle Shanahan deserves blame too. And he needs a reinvigorated year as well, coming back next season to prove that, hey, he's still the guy that should be leading this team. And I know we're coming up on time here, but what do you think? What's the next phase? Brock Purdy gets paid. What else do you need to see?
Tackle, center, speed at the wide receiver position, and another tight end to like complement Kittle. I'd love to see some badass double tight end sets like we used to see back in like the Jim Harbaugh days. You know what I mean? Where you had like Vernon Davis and Vance McDonald kind of doing some cool shit, and then
Yeah,
that would be cool to see. Um, we were kind of doing it, I feel like a couple years ago with like Ross Dwelly. That guy used to catch
yeah,
passes. You know what I mean? What happened to Kyle Juszczyk catching passes downfield? I mean,
yeah.
it's like been non-existent. So yeah, I think obviously shoring up the trenches, getting speed on the perimeter, and then yeah, Kyle, he has to like Steve Young said, he has to reinvent himself. Like
For sure.
I think that's the biggest elephant in the room. He has to, because whatever philosophy he had this year just was a disaster for sure. So
And I believe he can. And I believe you need
yeah,
to give him another year to show that he can, and he's gonna get it. Like I think there's no talk about him being fired, but yeah, he needs to look himself in the mirror and be like, look, man, I need to get better. And we get to see it moving forward, man.
yeah,
So Darshan, I appreciate you coming on
cool
the
man.
show. I don't know if we're going to be able to do one next week because it's Christmas and whatnot, but I do want to wish the fans that are watching, everybody that jumped into the chat, happy holidays and a very Merry Christmas. Darshan, to you and your beautiful family, Merry Christmas. Parting messages, brother. What do you got to say?
Yeah, man. Same to you. Merry Christmas, and let's just hope. Let's hope. The season ends well, and we have a really good off season, and we see some aliens in the off season with all these drones. Maybe we'll get some aliens. They
Hey,
finally reveal
can they
themselves.
play left tackle, man? We got a spot for
Yeah,
you, bro.
yeah. Can you guys run a go route? Like, what's up? Yeah.
Cool, man.
So,
Well,
oh,
everybody, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll talk again very, very soon, man.
see ya.
Peace.